Welcome back into another episode of Red Zone Talk, episode 21, if I'm not mistaken.
21.
Look at me. I'm good with numbers sometimes as I try to round out the rest of trivia as I'm sitting here looking at it. Kind of a stinker week of football, truthfully. Not
Really?
stinker. I wouldn't say stinker. I mean, there was not a lot of competitive games. I mean, we had the Rams-Lions game was close. The Cowboys made it close in the end. The Steelers scored late, but like a lot of large spreads.
Yeah, it was definitely. I'll give you that. Still good games, but just
That's what everyone's been saying that, and I didn't agree. I said that because I feel like a lot of people have been saying that, and
no, I think they were good games.
And here's the thing: at the end of the day, people are like, "Man, wildcard weekend sucked." Hey, guess what? Football is football. Shut up and enjoy it because it's going to go away here in about 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So we've got a month left to enjoy it. I don't care if I watch 44-14s the rest of the way. I'm enjoying football while I have it.
Yeah, four weeks exactly left. Yeah.
He's Tim Hunt. I'm Owen Burke. We like to talk about football. That's what we're here to do. So I forgot to turn my lamp on before we started recording. So
yeah, you can go do that here. We are Red Zone Talk Pod on Instagram, Red Zone Talk Pod on YouTube. We're Red Zone Talk on Instagram. Sorry, Red Zone Talk Pod on YouTube, Red Zone Talk Pod on Instagram. Make sure you subscribe, leave us a comment if you have a question for next week's episode. We're definitely gearing the show a little bit more towards YouTube. I'm trying to put chapters in. I thought I was going to be able to put them in last week. Couldn't figure it out. But we'll try to get that put together eventually. But we're going to do some trivia. Then we're going to jump into some of the headlines for the week. Then we're going to give you our playoff game predictions. And then we're going to wrap up with our bets of the week here. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, hang out for a little bit. And let us know what you want to hear more of for sure. So
yeah, hopefully we could get the chapters in, but it's been a hectic week in both of our lives. You more recently than I had. I had a real kick to the week to start. So we're going to try to get that up, but the schedule's re-kick back up in craziness towards the end. So hopefully you can see the chapters and you can skip to wherever you want to listen to. If not, we should have that ready by next week. So to kick us off.
Oh, and if chapters aren't in YouTube, they'll be in the description this time. So
there you go.
I will bookmark it in the description for you.
I've got my piece of paper right here, and I'm gonna try to help keep track of these timestamps. I'm sure I'll forget when it comes to like bets in the last segment, but we'll figure it out. So, trivia, my friend. I wanted to try to open this up, make it a little interesting. So.
Okay.
There's 13 names here because there's a 4-way tie for the 10th spot. And I was going to do 2014. I decided to bump it back to 2013 because I like the list of names. And also, you have more guys to choose from for your 10 points here. We're looking at the top receiving touchdown leaders since 2013. So receivers, tight ends, running backs. Anybody's at play. I'm going to go probably maybe like 4 strikes here because, again, it's always about the guys that are off the list versus that are on.
Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely some big names at the top. Some base information right out the gate. 59 touchdowns is our mark to beat at the bottom. That's what you got to get on there.
Okay.
You have some guys sprinkle into the 60s. You have 4 or 5 guys in the 70s and then 2 guys up in the 90s that are top of this list, kind of running away with it. Okay. So it's right around that 10-year mark. It's a little bit cleaner than the 2010 timeline.
Yeah.
So got any and what, 3 hints, 4 strikes.
Okay, 3 hints, 4 strikes. I'm gonna rip. I got a lot of names surfacing to mind right away. Let's go Travis Kelce. He's got to be on here.
Travis Kelce is on the list. He is number 6 on this list. 74 touchdowns, right in the middle.
Okay. Another guy that comes to mind. God, I don't know if he's a touchdown guy. Sure. Mike Evans always has the yards, but I mean, if you have that many seasons in a row with 1,000 yards, I feel like Mike Evans has got to be here. Mike Evans,
number 2 on the list. He is just 1 touchdown behind our number 1 guy. He has 94. Our leader has 95.
Okay. He just feels like he's been so good. Like, that's just right. That's his window.
Like, I was expecting him to be on there. I was not expecting him to be a hair step. I mean, he catches 2 more touchdowns. He's the number 1 guy on our list right now.
Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed he was 2 either. But it doesn't surprise me either because Because this was his 8th or 9th season in a
I
row
mean,
with
yeah,
1,000 yards.
every single year he's played in the league, he's had 1,000 yards.
Yes.
And people at like I think it was on the Dan Patrick show like 2-3 weeks ago. They're like, "Is Mike Evans Hall of Fame?" They're like, "Oh, Hall of very good." I was like, "No effing way." I was like, now, granted, he's got 4 or 5 years left in him, but at this pace, no one's ever done this. Like he'll be
Mr. Consistent. Like he reminds me more of Larry Fitzgerald than he does like some of the all-time receivers.
Yeah,
where it's like
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, it's not in a bad way. It's just Larry was always there, and he was never the best receiver in the league, and I think the same is true for Mike Evans. But yeah, he was just good. He was very good for a long time, and I think that puts him in the Hall of Fame.
I agree.
Back on topic, Stephon Diggs is he going to be here?
I believe so. Let me fact check here.
I'd be shocked if he wasn't. That feels right up his timeline as well.
Yes, he is number 7 on the list, right behind Travis Kelce with 67 touchdowns.
Okay, so that's 3 that I've hit.
That is 3. Yes.
Oh, God, Julio Jones is one of those weird ones where he's like, I know he had that monster season would have been right in here. Yeah, I'm gonna say Julio Jones. He's got to be up there, close maybe.
Julio Jones not here.
Okay.
He is definitely, if I were to sort this list by yards, I believe he'd be 2 on this list. He'd be in the top 3.
Yeah, he was never touched.
You remember the last 2 years in Atlanta? I think he had a combined 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, I forget about that.
He had a real bad streak there, not getting into the end zone.
That makes sense. I'm going to use a hint here. I'm going to burn a hint up here.
So, to look at some of our guys here, our top guy, I think, was regarded as the best receiver in the game there for a while. He's on a newer team. Not this season, but last season he joined a new team. Yeah, you have another guy, number 3 on our list, very consistent, joined a new team this year. And also, you got some...
Boy, these are so vague. They're not helpful. I know. Best receiver in the league?
Yeah, there's a guy that was, for about a 3 or 4 year stretch, was the best receiver in the league. Not very front of mind because he's not on a great team now, but...
joined a new team this year, huh?
Yeah, played with a legendary quarterback for a good majority of his career. Not this year. Last year he joined a new team. This is his second year on that team. This year.
That's still not very helpful.
It should be pretty helpful. I think you'll come back around to that one pretty easily.
Okay.
Best receiver in the game the last 2, 3, 4 years, up until he joined his
Justin Jefferson, but he's not on a new team. That's why that doesn't make any sense. Justin Jefferson's arguably been the best receiver.
He has arguably been up there. There was a guy that was there, probably the guy that you'd crowned before Justin Jefferson. Who did Jay Jettis take the crown from? That's probably who I'd say.
It's so weird because there's just this gap between Julio and Jay Jettis in my mind of like who was the best. Antonio Brown probably was the best for a stretch there. Obviously, it's not him.
And also, just another one to throw out there. There is one other. You got Travis Kelce. There is one other tight end in our top bank of names that'll land here. Okay. Be tricky with it. It's probably not going to be the first name that comes to your head.
Gronk immediately came to my mind.
I figured that'd be the name that would come to your head immediately.
Because I'm like, it can't be anyone close. Like, man, that makes it real tough because it's not Antonio Gates because that's too old.
It's going to be probably honestly, I was surprised that he showed up inside this top 10 because it's not like he scraped in tied for that 10 spot. He's just behind Diggs at 8 on this list. Very high peak, moved teams and was almost immediately forgotten about. And he played for, I want to say 3 teams after he left that very large peak of his career. Played with 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Is this Eric Ebron?
It is not Eric Ebron.
Okay. That was a bad guess, but it's what came to my mind.
I would say that's a bad
guess. Large peak, played with legendary quarterbacks.
High peak, arguably the best tight end in the game with Gronk, like in that conversation. I mean, there's only a couple guys that ever peak into that conversation that wasn't Kelce and Gronk. And again, surprised he was here.
Though,
And it was a long time ago though. Like this guy was in that conversation probably in 2013, 2014. I'm shocked that he is honestly as high up on that list as he is.
I'm not going to guess this. The only person I could think is Kittle. Like that's the only guy who would even remotely be there, but he's not. Nobody has been in that tier of Gronk that I can think of. And I might just be spacing on big names.
I don't think you're super spacing on it. He's very front of mind to me because I really like the quarterback he played with back in the day. We have another receiver that's on this list. Two receivers that are on this list that just got bounced from the playoffs last week. You got one guy that is, or I guess if you count Mike Evans, two guys. And Kelsey, three guys that are active on playoff teams. You got one guy that's still in the playoffs.
Still in the guy in the playoffs. Okay.
It's going to be playing this weekend. Another very high peak. Not a lot of guys that are obviously very recent, but guys that are still very active that you look at highly.
Is Cooper Kupp still here? Is Cooper Kupp here?
Cooper Kupp is not here.
Damn,
he's at 51 touchdowns
down the list.
I always feel horrible when I ask you trivia because I feel like you give me such great hints, and I am dog shit at giving you hints.
Because I'm still trying to think who Jay Jettis took the crown from, and I mean Cooper Kupp had the triple crown season right there.
I could give it away. He played in this when you think of the team, you're going to think in the same division as Justin Jefferson. He doesn't play there anymore, but
it's Devontae Adams. God damn it! Oh, that's such an obvious one.
That is the obvious one.
Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah, he is 95 touchdowns, top of our list.
It's incredible what 2 years in Las Vegas does. He just disappears off the mind.
Completely gone.
God, this tight end is going to drive me insane.
I mean, I feel like he was in that conversation. Again, maybe not in the conversation for the best, but maybe like you're like, this is the conversation. This is our lock for 3, right? This is the guy here. And again, very high peak with the team that drafted him and the first team he played for, I want to say 3, maybe 4 other teams afterwards. Never really had a huge impact. He was traded from his original team.
I'll go down on this. I'm okay. Is it Jimmy Graham? Is that who?
Is.
Okay.
My next hint was like, we just talked about him a couple weeks ago. In his trade.
Not in that conversation, I don't think. But
I think at his peak, he was like that, in my opinion. But
I don't think he ever. I mean, he didn't ever have this. Maybe for a season or two, not for
big Drew Brees guy over here. Love me some Jimmy Graham. My favorite touchdown celebration of all time as well.
He did nothing in Seattle and then nothing in Green Bay.
Yeah, no, the second he left New Orleans, he pretty much fell off a cliff. That's why I was surprised he was here. I was like, why he's still – that shows you how crazy those first, like 2013 to 2016 must have just been 3 ridiculous seasons.
Who give me another hint here of who So I got somebody who was eliminated this weekend.
Yeah, you've got 2 guys that were – yes, 2 guys that were eliminated this weekend.
Can't be AJ Brown. Hasn't been long enough. Not Devontae Smith.
Both guys that were eliminated that you're going to be thinking of are in the AFC as well.
Okay, so I don't even know who was eliminated in the AFC. It's that far off of mine. Can't be anyone on Pittsburgh, so that eliminates that game.
Good narrow down there.
Yeah, because everyone in Pittsburgh that plays wide receiver, they turn 25 and they immediately get traded away.
Yeah, 2 minutes of the game.
Who else? Who was the other AFC teams that played? I don't even know. Oh, the Chiefs and the Dolphins. Oh, Tyreek's here.
Tyreek Hill is here. He is number 4 on our list. And then the other guy that got bounced is one of our. Oh no, he is scraped the number 9 spot. Not tied for 10. 60 touchdowns.
Mm-hmm. And he plays on an AFC team.
Yeah, he played on an AFC team that got eliminated.
Was there 3 games? There was Pittsburgh. Why am I just blanking on this game?
You know this.
What team? Like who played this weekend? Oh, the Texans and Cleveland. Okay. God. Oh, and he got eliminated. Okay, I was about to say it could be Brandon Cooks, but he plays for the Cowboys. So it's got to be Amari Cooper then, if it's the Browns.
It is Amari Cooper. And just a fun fact to toss it out there because I can. Brandon Cooks is the first guy off this list at 57 touchdowns. So not a terrible thought, truthfully.
He was always just like he could never be good enough to stay with a team. That was
Yeah.
his problem.
Yeah.
Like New Orleans traded him, and then he played in New England for a year, and then got traded to the Rams and played there for a year. And I think he played in back-to-back Super Bowls on losing teams. There you go. We talked about it with the running backs a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's a guy who played in back-to-back Super Bowls for the losing team each time.
That's just pain.
Is
Ultimate
that
pain.
right? I think it is. It makes sense. It would.
It's
be right.
close enough to where.
Yeah, because he would have been on the losing team against the Eagles for the Patriots, and then he was on the Rams when they lost because he was in that big play. Okay, how many do I have far?
You have 7 so far. So
Okay,
still 6 names available. 3 to get yourself the full points available. Still missing our number 3 guy on the list.
Tyreek was an obvious one. That was a bad. I can't believe I didn't think of him sooner.
And also your number 5 guy, you have said his name, but it was not an official guess, so that may not be super helpful coming back. But the number 3 guy on this list, I want to say he's on a new team this year, if I remember right. I said that originally. I believe that that's correct. Just to double check myself here. Yes. Played his first year on a new team this year, his 3rd team in his career. You think of him mainly for probably his first run in the AFC. Went over to the NFC, probably had one of the most iconic catches of all time, in my opinion. Well, it's a regular season game. It's just a real cool looking catch. Truthfully.
I was like, that's so hard to like pinpoint down.
Yeah, you're like fucking. Well, I already guessed Stephon Diggs.
Yeah, it can't be OBJ. There's just no way. He's hurt too much. Doesn't make any sense to me.
And he was the 1,000-yard receiver this year as well on that new team. And we did talk about it, and I was surprised that he had caught 1,000 yards this year.
Huh.
Number 5 guys, again, a guy that you said but was not an official guess.
Okay.
And then actually you've now had 2 guys that you said that were not official guesses that are on here.
Okay, I'm gonna rip one here. The name I feel the best about, and if I lose on it, I don't care. AJ Brown, is he here?
AJ Brown is not here.
I can live with that.
Most likely, I think just doesn't have the longevity yet.
Yeah, I knew it would be kind of weird. Like he's only been really good for like 5 years, so I figured it'd be tough for him to get there.
He will be there shortly, I would assume.
I'd imagine in a year or two.
Still got 7.
Yeah, I'll take 7.
So, our number 3 guy playing on a new team this year, caught 1,000 yards, would be DeAndre Hopkins, 78 touchdowns.
Man, that's a bad one to not get. That makes so much sense.
That's a miss. One of the names you said that was not an official guess, Antonio Brown did make this list. He is the number 5 guy.
Okay. See, it's like weird because like it's all these guys who have been around for a while, and some of them have become like
this is like, hey, name me your top 10 receivers from 5 years ago. Yeah. That's what this list feels like.
Yeah, pretty much. And then like, D-Hop in Tennessee this year. I kind of forgot he played for Tennessee this year.
When I saw he caught 1,000 yards, I was stunned, truthfully.
Yeah.
So Antonio Brown was 5. You got Kelsey, Diggs, and Graham Cooper. And then you get to our 4-way tie for 10, which you didn't get any of these guys. Tyler Lockett, 59 touchdowns.
Wow.
Adam Thielen, 59 touchdowns.
Dang, okay.
2 shockers there, in my opinion. Odell was the other guy that you said there at the end that did scrape in at 59. And Mr. Reliable himself, Keenan Allen, also drops into that.
Keenan Allen came across my mind early on. I don't know why I didn't guess him, but like Keenan Allen makes sense with that. But shout out slot receivers. Dang.
You had some short guys pop into that list. Some fun guys just off. Brandon Cooks, like I said, tied with Brandon Cooks. Marvin Jones, 57 touchdowns. And then coming in, the Prince himself, Rob Gronkowski, at 54 touchdowns, number 13 on the list.
Yeah.
Cooper Kupp was 15 just off, and Julio was 17. So not terrible guesses there early on your strikes. Yeah.
Julio made sense to me, but it would have been like such a tail end of his peak. You know what I mean?
Boy, you get to some names here. Right as the list cuts off, the bottom 3 guys before like you have to start paying for the list. Randall Cobb, Emmanuel Sanders, T.Y. Hilton. How's that for a round out of your top 20 right there?
T.Y. Hilton was good up until like last year, so don't diss your boy T.Y. But all right, you ready to jump into some headlines here?
I am. How about a perfect 20-minute timestamp for trivia? You can't beat that.
I know, makes it nice and easy. We're gonna ignore this first one because it's not confirmed. I'm gonna take that off.
I mean,
Uh,
yeah, we might mention it once we get to the last one, but
I'd rather talk about it when it's official and not talk about hypotheticals.
fair.
Um,
F. Adam Schefter. Moving on.
yeah. Steelers decide to hold on to Mike Tomlin for one more year. Um, I was a little surprised by it just because of
Really?
the amount of yeah. It's again, this market is going to drive teams to make rash decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because of the guys who are available.
True.
Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Jim Harbaugh, Ben Johnson, and that's the top four guys. And
I was like, that's
normally,
just the top four. There are
yeah,
plenty of talented coordinators that are up for jobs too.
yeah, this is one of those ones where I mean, if Belichick, Carroll, and Harbaugh, let's say all three of those guys weren't available, Ben Johnson's probably the number one candidate most years, right? Like
Yeah.
he is probably the hottest OC. And then you have God, what's his name in Houston? Is it
Bobby Slowick.
Bobby Slowick? Like he's probably gonna get some interviews and he's gonna be a hot
What?
candidate.
Yeah, watching that Houston Cleveland game, he should be, I think, off the top of my head, should be the number 2 OC on lists behind Ben Johnson this
Behind Ben
offseason.
Johnson. So like you have 7 guys out there who are really good candidates that you feel really good about. Oh, I'm sorry. We even missed Mike Vrabel. We didn't include him in
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So
exactly.
so when you have 8 guys who you would feel really good about being your head coach, right? Um, I'm kind of surprised the Steelers didn't make a move. Maybe I just look at it and I go, okay, if Mike Vrabel's not going to the Patriots, what's an organization that makes sense for Mike Vrabel? The Steelers to me just felt like a fit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
And so maybe Vrabel's still available next offseason. He might take a year off, who knows? But
that'd be insane.
it's on the table, right? Like it's definitely never say never. Like I never would have guessed Doug Peterson didn't get picked up in the same cycle, and
True.
he had to take a year off. So
And it
uh,
worked out in the better for him, right? He
it
gets
did.
Trevor
Yeah.
Lawrence in the long run.
He got a
So,
better situation. Um, and honestly, Sean Payton having that year off, you know what I mean? I thought he might wait until the Chargers job came open this year. So,
yeah.
um, but yeah, I'm a little surprised. I don't think it's impossible, but it is a little shocking.
I agree. I think, and I mean, we can talk. I don't know if you want to jump Dallas and Philly into this conversation, if you want to save their coaches for their headline spot later on.
Yeah, we can just segue to it unless you have something else you want to add to the
No,
Steelers conversation.
yeah, as far as Pittsburgh goes, I think what holds them off is that Tomlin then quickly joins that list as one of the top candidates, right? I mean,
Oh
he
yeah, yeah,
is.
he's in that cycle.
And it's one of those things where, as much as they have not exceeded expectations, right? Pittsburgh is about winning Super Bowls. That's what it has been about up until 5-10 years ago. Without Mike Tomlin, is this a 4-win team, 6-win team? Like the fact that
Yeah.
this team has not had a losing record amongst all the quarterback, right? Remember the year with Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges, like all these years. And as much as I like to poke fun and talk down on Tomlin as not a great coach because they can't have any playoff success, I think this team would be absolutely god awful without him at the helm. So I wasn't, kind of shocked by it. I do hate the reporter asking him about his contract after that game. Like,
Yeah,
not the time
it's
and place.
crazy. Yeah.
Not the time and place for that question.
The thing I'll say is, yes, he took a below par roster and made it slightly above par, but
Mhm.
how long do you tolerate that for? Right? Like that's the thing is like Matt Canada probably needed to be fired before this year started. He tolerated that way too long. Um, to me, at some point, the excuse of, well, the roster's not good enough. Well, maybe the coach, like Kenny Pickett, has not developed like we kind of hoped he would in his second
Nope,
year.
not at
Um,
all.
and they let talent leave. Like that's the other thing to me that's like it's not staying. And typically when that happens, it's a bad sign to me. You know what I mean?
I agree.
when you look at the season James Conner had this year, he was hurt for 3 or 4 games, still ran for 1,000 yards. I mean, they could have used it, right? Like Jalen Warren had an okay season. Najee had an okay season, right? Like just pieces that you're taking in the first round. And maybe it is to blame the GM, but at some point you got to get two people that are on the same page.
This is to what I see Tomlin and the Steelers going through right now is they are living the Patriot way with none of the Super Bowl wins that have came with it, right?
Yeah.
Like talent comes and goes, but they find a way to win. The issue is they're not finding a way to win in the postseason, right? There was a period of time where they had the best running back and the best receiver in the league and a top 10 quarterback in Big Ben with Le'Veon and Antonio Brown. And now granted, no success for either of those guys afterwards, but still, you had something that was working. And if you're going to be the player's coach and the keep the locker room happy kind of guy, you have to keep the locker room happy. You have the killer bees, man. You've got to hold this team together. That is what you are here for. So it's one of those things where the expectations are he is exceeding expectations of his roster, but failing just about every other expectation as as it goes. So Beans go missing on you?
Yeah, I didn't know where she went, and then she popped back up. So she must have been laying behind me or something, and I was just like had that moment of like, where'd that cat go? But yeah, let's talk about we'll talk about the Cowboys next. Cowboys obviously a catastrophic failure in the playoffs. Maybe the most surprising loss out of any team in the playoffs so far, I would say.
The unfortunately, not to take a dig at the Cowboys or their fans at all, unfortunately, they're never going to be the most surprising loss in the playoffs because we're expecting it at some point. The way that they lost, absolutely shocking. Brody had a haircut on Saturday. We left the house. It was like 2 minutes into the game, 0-0. Get about halfway through the haircut. I'm like, oh, let me check the score of the game. Caitlin's dad's a Cowboys fan. Down 27-0 with 2 minutes before half. I was like, holy shit. This is insane.
I think that's what makes it like I knew the choke was coming. I didn't think it was coming against Green Bay, and I didn't think Jordan Love would just shred that defense. They obviously announced today they're keeping McCarthy, and I think that's the most surprising keep out of anyone. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
I think it is. I want you to know that the news broke that McCarthy was coming back, and this is Bleacher Report's TikTok account right here. I don't have to show you the video. It's just a picture of Mike McCarthy. Listen to the sound. Dallas Cowboys retain Mike McCarthy. It's sad. I had this thought at work today where I was like, okay, it is noon, 1 p.m. Mike McCarthy has not been fired. At the end of the day, it's a mistake because one, either you're keeping him, which is a mistake, or two, you're holding on, and you're going to work yourself out of a couple of interviews some guys might sign if you don't get rid of him ASAP.
I will say the thing too with him is it's hard to fire. Okay. It's hard to fire any coach when your quarterback was probably a top 5 MVP candidate and elevated to that position, mind you, right? Like not a guy who's normally in the MVP conversation. Dak was definitely a front runner at one point and then is probably going to end up finishing top 5 in voting. So to me, it is difficult to sit here and argue that, right? The postseason success has just been non-existent.
The Green Bay Packers have more playoff wins at AT&T Stadium than the Dallas Cowboys do.
Which is nuts.
The Houston Texans were founded in 2002, and they have the same amount of playoff wins as the Dallas Cowboys in that time frame.
Yeah.
If CJ Stroud pulls an upset over Lamar Jackson and the Ravens this weekend, he will tie Dak Prescott for playoff wins at 2.
Yeah.
It is, to me, this is the most surprising keep, in my opinion, because we could talk about Pittsburgh, we could talk about Philly. When there are these candidates available, because it's the same conversation every year. It's not a talent issue. Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, we have these guys. We have all this talent, but we can't get it done in the playoffs. Bill Belichick, all these guys are available. and we're holding on to Mike McCarthy. Unfortunately, spoiler alert, 2024 is not the Cowboys' year. It will not be the Cowboys' year until Mike McCarthy is out of town. Not to say that he is the sole reason that they fail in the playoffs, but he is not elevating them. He is not helping them in the playoffs. If the Dallas Cowboys win the Super Bowl next year with Mike McCarthy as the head coach, I will shave my head. I promise you it will not happen. I feel fully confident in that.
It might not grow back for you, pal. You better be careful.
Yeah, I know. I got to be careful, but that's truthfully somewhat how confident I feel about Mike McCarthy not being able to get the job done there in Dallas. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
It is interesting. Like, I feel conflicted on it. It's really hard to fire a coach after that regular season, because he has elevated. The offense has looked better than it did last year, and honestly, it was the defense that let him down more. But in that game, it was both.
Yeah, in that game, it was both, right? We looked at, wow, Mike McCarthy. I remember looking at that game, watching it, and, they did a good job to dress up the score at the end and not make it super ugly, right? It was like, 45-32 or whatever it was.
Yeah,
I was like, Mike McCarthy may have just lost his job. And truthfully, Dan Quinn probably worked himself out of a couple head coaching interviews with how horrible his defense was prepared for that game.
That was one of those games where the score did not represent the game at all. Like,
not
that game
at all.
was not like that.
And I don't watch every single Cowboys game. I'm not a Cowboys fan. And even if I was, I'm horrible about watching every game of any team throughout a season, even my own. Cowboys fans have told me a lot that, like, the box score looks good. I know Dak threw for 400 or 350 and 3 touchdowns and a pick. And every week that happens, they're like 202 touchdowns was in the last 8 minutes of the game when we were already out of it for 3 quarters. So a lot of those came in garbage time down the stretch. And again, I agree with you. It's hard to sit there and fire your coach after the year that you've had with your quarterback and your offense, especially with him being the play caller. But you listed off those names of candidates, and I'm like, this is the best head coaching class we've had. This is the best batch of candidates I think I've had ever in my time, like, being this involved in football and sports media. And guys like Jim Harbaugh don't come around every year.
No.
And there's 4 of them this offseason. And you're riding with Mike McCarthy for another year.
Honestly, probably realistically 5.
Yeah.
5 or maybe 4. But let's talk about the Eagles now.
Man.
What a collapse of a season from 10-1 and then, excuse me, would they finish out the year? Did they have 11 wins in the season?
1-6 in the. If you count the playoff games, they went 1-7 in their last 8.
Yeah,
if you count
horrendous.
that Tampa Bay
game. Just a slide. The offense is a mess. The defense is a mess. Obviously, they made the defensive coordinator change. I know everyone wants to dunk on Matt Patricia. I mean, he had this defense for 4 weeks before a playoff game. I don't know if I can hold any onus on him of how that
definitely not looked. All of it.
Yeah. So that's a piece of it, but that offense playing as bad as it did, I mean, 9 points against Tampa Bay's defense is just horrendously bad.
As much as I love to dunk on, and honestly I don't do it often. I do it in my own head, but honestly I never talk about it just because Tampa Bay is not very prevalent in headlines since Tom Brady retired. I'm not a huge fan of Todd Bowles as the head coach. I really haven't been. I thought he should have got let go last year. I thought even this year that, with the candidates available, that they might move on from him this year. Great defensive game plan. They knew that the Eagles were struggling. And what do you do with a team that is already kind of on their heels, doubting themselves, possibly going to shoot themselves in the foot? Send the house at them. You send everything you got at them. And they didn't really have to. They were a lot of 4-man blitzes, 5-man blitzes that they were running with the stunts that they had in the middle of the line. And they made one of the best offensive lines in football look like Swiss cheese for a good majority of the night. And we'll talk a little bit more about that Lions-Bucks matchup coming up. But if you've got 4 days of practice before a Todd Bowles game on Sunday, 3.5 of those days need to be preparing for blitzes. I mean, he is extremely creative with how to create pressure, especially in the interior of the line. Philly was not ready at all.
Yeah, it's for how good that offensive line is. Like, there was a scheming issue or Like, I don't know what it was, but it was bad. Every third down, it got to third down, and you're like, Philly can't convert this. It just
They
that's what it felt like.
Fun fact, they did not convert a single third down in that
Oh,
game.
did they really? I didn't know that.
I believe it was 0 for 9 on third down in that game. So
it just felt that game felt out of control. It felt like one team was prepared going into it, and the other one just had no idea. They're like, "Oh, we have a game today," like it was bad.
Yeah, they've put a lot of patchwork, a lot of older pieces on the defense with Darius Slay, and they bring in James Bradbury 2 years ago, and they added Kevin Byard to that secondary, right? You have Fletcher Cox. There's a lot of, and you bring in Shaq Leonard, a lot of old patchwork pieces, and it works if they're playing together and you can get the most out of those guys. And this is a team, more specifically a defense, that I think Bill Belichick at the helm of this defense, it's the best defense in the league. I have no doubt in my mind. Darius Slay and James Bradbury both turn into Stephon Gilmore next year, and it's a nightmare to play against that defense. But they were not ready. It's not all Patricia's fault. They were on a slide before he took over the defensive play calling.
Yeah.
I don't know what Brian Johnson has against DeAndre Swift. For a guy to rip 9 yards on the first carry, we get to the second quarter, all of a sudden Kenneth Gainwell's the main running back. And people are like, oh, you can't run the ball when you're down 3 scores. They weren't down 3 scores when they stopped giving DeAndre Swift the ball. I don't know.
It made no sense to me of like just even. And the other part of it too, that was so frustrating. I know you don't have AJ Brown, and that's a big part of that offense. Mm-hmm. But Devontae Smith was like, he looked like a 1. I was like, this is a guy who just needed opportunity, and you're not utilizing this at all.
And what you will notice, I think he had 150 plus yards in that game. He had 150 yards, 148 pure talent. If you look at that, there was not a schemed. There's no scheme yardage there, right? Where you run a smash concept or whatever it is, and that's how he gets open. It was, they got it to him 5-10 yards down the field, and he made people miss and got 20 to 30 to 40 yards on that play.
Yeah, he looked like a playmaker out there for sure.
Yeah, and that's what he is. And truthfully, it doesn't look great for AJ Brown, especially with the headlines that they had coming down the stretch.
No.
He was in the headlines negatively a lot down the stretch. Not to say that they don't need him. He's a top 5 receiver in the game. It's always going to be nice to have him. But it's a luxury that I think they can afford to lose, especially with how good Devonta Smith looked. The offensive game plan was bad all around. And defensively, huge shout out to Baker Mayfield. And also a huge shout out to Sean McVay. Baker credits a lot of the resurgence to Sean McVay because – you remember he gets booted out of Cleveland somewhat unfairly in my book, not by others.
Let's save some Baker talk for when we
I'll
get to this game. Yeah, just because I have some thoughts and feelings I want to share on it, but I don't want to.
Okay.
I don't want to waste it while we're dunking on the Eagles here. You know,
I'll bring it down. So, I'll bring it back. Yeah,
I'm gonna bring it back on schedule, but I don't know. I think it's also, again, like we talked about with McCarthy, it's really hard to come out and say, "Hey, let's fire Nick Sirianni." Right? Because it's like they were in the Super Bowl last year, but Sirianni doesn't really do any coordination well, right? Like he is so coordinate dependent that you lose Shane Steichen and
Jonathan Gannon.
Like it's tough, right? And I can't remember who tweeted it. It was a quarterback who tweeted it, and he was like, "Your best hope if you have an offensive coordinator you like is that he gets a head coaching job after a year, stinks so badly that he will never get another one, gets fired after a year, and then he can be your offensive coordinator for just paired with your team for a long time."
Yeah.
AKA Josh McDaniels, right? It took
the ultimate
10 years to get another shot at it.
Mm-hmm.
But for him, he's in a tricky spot. Like they've got to, I don't know who they go out and get as their offensive coordinator, but they've got to start making calls and figure something out because it's not looking pretty for Nick for sure.
I think we are going to quickly enter an era where those player coaches or non-coordinator specific coaches will not exist because you run into this. And I am terrified that Baltimore is going to quickly run into this issue. I love John Harbaugh. He's been my head coach the whole time I've been a fan of the Ravens. when Mike McDonald and Todd Monken eventually both get head coaching jobs, and McDonald might be in this offseason, the only reason he might stick is just because of how many other great candidates are out there. The Ravens are going to be sore, very sore in a way, losing both coordinators. So Sirianni gets a little bit of a benefit of the doubt because, you lose both coordinators and you still go 10-1, but then you kind of collapse at the end of the year. Like, you get a benefit of the doubt, but also like, hey, man, well, what the hell am I paying you for, right?
It is one of those. Yeah, I think he gets a little bit of rope, but I think this might be the end of it. And again, we've said it a couple times. If the candidates weren't out there, I don't think we'd be talking about it like we are with him.
Not at all.
Him in particular, McCarthy. It's probably well deserved at this point. 2-3 years of really bad playoff losses in a row is just not a good look.
No.
Where Sirianni has one bad playoff loss, you know what I mean? But I think it is the end of the rope for him. Let's jump in. The Falcons, man. I have to give them credit. They are swinging for the fences. Bill Belichick interviewed for the Falcons, and Jim Harbaugh also interviewed for the Falcons. I just wanted to touch on this briefly because it's not a team that I necessarily would have pegged to go after Jim or Bill. Like, I mean, Bill, we talked about the fit for Bill. I think it makes a lot of sense for Bill, but I didn't think Jim. I think they're going to swing for the fences. I think they're going to throw an offer at one of those two guys that is just they can't turn down.
I agree.
And how villain arc is it for the city of Atlanta that Bill Belichick has the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history against your team, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 years later ends up coaching that exact team? I think that's a really fascinating storyline.
I agree.
Just to see that come full circle. It's also wild to me. Like, what do the interviews look like with guys like with Bill Belichick? Like, what is the question?
I think it's more just about like, are you okay if there's a GM and you're not in control of both? That's my only question.
I think it's more of a structure thing of like, hey, who are you thinking for this? Who are you thinking for that? Are you okay with this? Because it's like, what defensive scheme would you run? I'd run the defensive scheme that I've ran for the last 24 years in New England. It's like, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
You're like, what scheme is that? And you're like, it changes every week depending on who we play because that's how defensive football should be played.
Who'd you bring as your OC? Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels is probably coming as my OC. It makes sense. He probably won't get to bring his son, which is interesting. Stephen Belichick interviewed for the DC job in New England. So there's talks that he'll stay. There's talks that there's another coach on it. I can't remember who's actually a former player too. I'm pretty sure he also interviewed for our DC job. There's talks that Josh McDaniels is going to get an interview for the OC job, and Bill O'Brien might get an interview for the OC job in New England.
In New England?
Is
he going to re-interview for his own job?
Yeah. Oh, I don't think so. Technically, nobody was the defensive coordinator in New England, so they're making everybody interview for it.
That makes sense.
Then there's rumors that they're going to make everyone interview for OC to see if they'll keep Billy B or not. But there's a chance he stays, which I think is a mistake. But
I would agree. You're entering this year where it's not like, oh, well, let's see how Billy B does again. There's a rookie quarterback in town. You have to be sure of who you have. There is no trial and error.
Yeah.
You will horribly ruin whoever you take at 3 if you do this OC jumbled nonsense you did to Mac Jones.
I want to get back on track here. If you're Atlanta, who do you think you want more? Do you want Bill Belichick more, or do you want Jim Harbaugh more? There's a 10-year age gap between the two of them, mind you.
Truthfully, I think I would rather have Bill Belichick. I think he comes in with the talent they have on defense, add a piece or two, not much. And you get a quarterback, and I think that team easily wins its division. And I think that team can win a playoff game or two, and possibly with the right pieces can win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years. And that's probably about as long as he's going to coach.
If you're lucky, if you get him for 4, like I'd be shocked if he does 3. Would surprise me. Like 3, I'd be like, wow. Like 3, I think is a max. 4 would be just insane.
Would 3 put him at 75, right?
Yeah,
He's
he's
72 now.
72 or 71, something like that.
I know Saban is 72. I couldn't remember if he was the same age or older as Saban was.
I know they're around the same age. He's 71, but he'll be 72 next season.
By the time season rolls around.
Oh, dang.
Season.
Bill and I have pretty close birthdays. 2 weeks apart, Bill.
Hey, how about it? There you go.
Yeah. Great.
Put the hoodie on.
Born in April. But yeah, I think it's interesting too, because you have this conversation of, okay, you put Justin Fields on the Falcons. Who do you want then? I think I'd probably have Bill at that point.
Yeah, I would agree. If they trade up and draft like Jaden Daniels, give me Jim Harbaugh at that point, right? Like I would rather have a guy that's going to be around with my quarterback for a very long time at that point. I don't want to shuffle back and forth of head coaches while having a rookie quarterback at the helm. Like, Bill would retire while that guy's on his rookie deal at that point. That's not what I want by any stretch for my quarterback. Down the wrong pipe there?
Yeah, down the wrong pipe a little bit.
Yeah. I do not trust the source on this at all. And this story makes me not trust the source at all anymore. But I saw a tweet I think it was yesterday or the day before, that apparently that the Bears might be able to get pick 8 for Justin Fields from Atlanta. If it is true, the final second runs off the clock in the Super Bowl, and the second that window opens, you do it. I don't care if it's straight up. I don't care if you got to throw in a third with Justin Fields to get pick 8. Do it in a effing heartbeat. I love Justin Fields. I think he'd be a stud in Atlanta. Not worth the number 8 overall pick. That's asinine. So
he'd have to win an MVP for him to be worth that pick,
or a Super Bowl.
Yeah. I think either one would be appropriate there. All right. Let's jump into our predictions here for the playoff games. I put these in order of when the games are again. And we could spend a little bit more time on these ones just because there's 4, and I feel like the games are a little bit more interesting. I think the last 2 are especially interesting. Ravens versus Texans. I predicted the Ravens. It looks like you've got the Ravens as well. I think CJ Stroud has truly been magical. I just don't know how long that magic is going to continue, right? I think, honestly, Cleveland's defense was surprisingly disappointing. I think we talked about it before the game. Or before the show. It was surprisingly bad.
Idiot of the week over here. Remember, I don't know if anybody remembers, we were talking about bets last week, and I was like, man, I just don't know if that game gets to 44.5. Houston did it by themselves. They literally broke the over solely by themselves, scoring 45 in that game. I will tell you, if they can come into Baltimore and win this Saturday, Bobby Slowick is the guaranteed number 2 guy behind Ben Johnson that's not like a former, already been an NFL head coach. Works his way into a couple interviews, probably gets himself a job offer this offseason.
Yeah. It's truly been a magical run. I just think Baltimore has too much on the line, right? I think like the big stigma around Lamar, he's not a pocket passer. This year he's looked as an elite pocket passer, right?
Yep.
He's probably going to win the MVP. Well deserves it. And looks like he could be a guy, if you take away his legs, maybe he's not a top 3 or maybe not a top 5 guy, but definitely could be a starter in this league past when his legs run out on him. I truly
a top 12, top 10 guy.
Yeah. Even without his legs. With his legs, I think he's a top 7 guy without question. So I think there's too much. Now the stigma is, can he win a playoff game, right? Has he won one playoff game?
I believe he's 1-3 in the playoffs, if I remember correctly. Which I don't really count one of them because it was he took over 4 weeks before after Joe went out and lost to the Chargers. Mm-hmm. They played the Chargers in week 17, played the Browns, then played the Chargers again in the wild card round, like 6 weeks into his career.
Okay.
So truthfully to me, 1-2, but all time 1-3.
You have home field advantage, right? So, and you've had that extra week to prepare, and you've had the extra week to prepare for a rookie quarterback on top of that, right? Like,
We knew who we were playing coming into this. There was no surprises to be had, in my opinion. Who was
it was either Houston or Cleveland, probably.
Yeah, Houston, Cleveland,
maybe Pittsburgh if they pulled a shocker, but I kind of
doubt it would be Miami would be the other team I would have game planned for. So like Miami, you just hung 56 on them. I'm not going to game plan for them. Houston, they beat them week 1, but obviously a lot of growth has happened. I'm planning for that team, and I'm obviously planning for Cleveland at that game. Like that's the game that we're scouting the most going into last weekend, most likely.
Yeah. So I think that one's a pretty straightforward one. I think they have a better defense. I think they have a better offense. It'll be a little bit more of a test too. CJ Stroud is playing outside, right? He's used to playing in an indoor stadium. Having to go outside to Baltimore, I think, is going to be a different experience. And I think ultimately this playoffs might be the most weather affected playoffs that we'll ever see.
Yeah. Just definitely going to be up there.
Buffalo's getting dumped with snow. Kansas City was the 4th coldest playoff game ever. Just a lot of stuff like that going around.
Who would have thought that like the coldest and most ridiculous weather offseason we would have would not include Lambeau Field at all because of the 7th seed, right? Like of all the crazy games that have been played there, to tack in just a hair before we move on. I don't want to make it seem like, I'm brushing off Houston as like a cakewalk game or anything. It's the playoffs. These guys belong here for a reason. Say what you want about Cleveland's defense. They were very, very, very good this year, and they hung 45 on them pretty handedly. That being said, this is probably the most confident I've ever been in a Ravens team. I think maybe in my lifetime, truthfully. The only thing that will worry me is a slow start in the first quarter. If we come out cold, that is when the worry is really going to kick up for me. But Lamar Jackson's been the best quarterback the last 8 weeks of football. I think bar none, in my opinion. I mean, we were coming down the stretch there. They had to play the Chargers, the Jags, the Niners, and the Dolphins. And you're like, this is a gauntlet. If you can come out 3-2, you're happy. 5-0. Didn't lose a game. And skunked, destroyed Miami and San Francisco in that stretch. So they played the best football during down the stretch. You could say it was Buffalo, they had the best record in the last 7 weeks. To me, Lamar Jackson was the best quarterback down the stretch. We've played extremely well. A little banged up coming into this game, but like you said, there is so much on the line, and Mike McDonald will have a ridiculous game plan to get after CJ Stroud.
This would be, if they lose this game, I think it would be potentially the most surprising loss. Like, I think as long as Green Bay doesn't beat I think Green Bay beating San Francisco would be more surprising than Houston beating the Ravens. It'd be damn close, though.
It's close.
All the conversation we've had about the Eagles and the Cowboys this week gets immediately trumped if either one of those two teams wins or loses because, I don't think it's a dismissive game, but it is a game that you should just win, right? Like, and very rarely can you say that in playoff games, but a rookie head coach, a rookie quarterback playing outside
against a great defense with a great defensive coordinator, and on the other side, a team that stomped.
With a team that has the league's MVP on their offense. So
I don't know if I'll be able to do the show next week if we lose. Honestly, I'm going to be distraught.
It would be a bad look. All right, let's jump into 49ers Packers. It's lame that they loaded those together on a Saturday.
I agree.
I wish they did one as the early game Sunday and the one as the early game Saturday. Mm-hmm. But whatever. I have the 49ers. You have the 49ers. I'm going to spoil it for those two. It just feels like the right pick there. Again, Jordan Love, as much as he's not a rookie quarterback, he is a rookie quarterback. If this was the NBA, he'd be a rookie quarterback, right?
Yeah,
like the NBA does that weird thing where they don't play. Then it's like, oh, that guy's, not a rookie till he plays.
Yeah.
I don't understand how that rule works, if I'm being honest.
I absolutely hate it. That's a topic for another day.
But yeah, so Jordan Love kind of in his first season, has had some ups and downs. We were pretty low on him to kind of start the year, got up on him a little bit, and then I think we got low on him again. Boy, did he prove us wrong in Dallas, right? That game was truly, truly impressive. And for San Francisco, again, this isn't a game where you're not only expected to win, we know you can win, right? Last year, they looked good in the playoffs up until that NFC Championship game. So the expectation is even higher for Brock Purdy. I mean, Lamar has to go out and prove himself, so the pressure's there. Brock Purdy's, we know he should win these type of games, right? Clearly, the better defense, the better offense, all around a better team.
Yeah, and it's not even that they looked bad in the NFC title game. He tore his UCL in the first quarter, second quarter. Like,
Yeah.
they got hurt. They could have easily represented them in the Super Bowl last year had they not had both of their quarterbacks go down in that game. So, honestly, these two games are so similar. I know a lot of people were talking last week about how Jordan Love, CJ Stroud, playoff debuts, big games, comparing those two. These two games are so similar to me. Like, this isn't a cakewalk game for San Fran just as much as it's not for Baltimore, but it's a game that you should win. It's not like, oh, we're looking at the NFC title game already. The Packers can beat the Niners. It is wholeheartedly possible. Houston can beat Baltimore, but they shouldn't. Neither of these teams should walk out of Saturday with a win. But it's possible. If one of those 2-1 seeds come out slow, it's not an easy matchup. And this is the playoffs. No. That's what we're here for.
Yeah. Just a friendly reminder too, before there was a 7 seed, the Giants, the 2 times they won the Super Bowl, they were 6 seeds both times. So it's not impossible, right? It's just really, really hard to do, and you have to kind of hit a streak there. Just with how young both those quarterbacks are, it's what's slowing me down a little bit.
Yeah, and also Jordan Love and the Packers, the first 7 seed to win a playoff game since they expanded to 7 as well.
Dang,
which is you're like kind of surprising, but at the same time, they're a 7 seed for a reason.
It's only been like what 2 years.
I want to say 3 or 4.
Yeah,
I feel like it's been lined up right as well with the show. I feel like every time we've done playoff predictions, there's been a 7 seed.
7 seed, yeah. So maybe it's been 3. This is our 3rd year doing this show, right? Is that right?
That sounds wrong, but I think you're right.
It's our 3rd year. It might be our 4th, but yeah, somewhere in there. Next, honestly, in my opinion, this game is more exciting than the final game in different ways. Lions versus the Bucks. This is just one of those ones that it's so hard.
Yeah.
It's so hard to tell.
It shouldn't be, but it is.
It shouldn't be. I'm gonna pick the Bucks here. I might be falling sucker for that Baker magic, and I am prone to fall in love with the kid for sure.
He's got a special place in my heart. I don't blame you at all.
Go ahead. Who you got?
All you. I've got. I'm going to take the Lions in this game, but I want you to tell me why you're picking the Bucks, because I think you're picking them for different reasons, but I think I might have a better reason why you should pick them.
So this game is going to be close. There's just no doubt in my mind it's going to be close. Even the Rams and the Lions came down to the very last couple drives there.
Yeah.
The last drive, really. And I kind of thought Stafford and McVay were going to prevail in that game because of that fact, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. Now, the thing about this one is we always talk about it in the regular season, right? A team that wins 8 one-possession games one year we can't expect that same level of success the following year unless there's dramatic improvements, right? Mm-hmm. Just really hard to do. Detroit has gone from close game to close game to close game to close game. And after a while, you have to sit here and go, it's going to catch up to them. And then when we've talked about weather a lot in a lot of these games. It's a non-factor, right? Detroit plays inside of a dome. Mm-hmm. And the other way that I'm viewing this too is Baker shredded a Philadelphia defense, struggling, but a talented Philadelphia defense. Mm-hmm. Far more talented than the Lions defense. A good defense, mind you, but not anywhere near the talent level. So I have high expectations for Baker to play really, really well in this game, and I think it's going to give him the edge. Now, do I think they win by 2 touchdowns? Probably not. But I think ultimately Detroit's clock has ticked enough. And then when I say it out loud, it's like Detroit in the NFC Championship game. It just doesn't sound – I'm not ready to say that.
As much as you say that, are you ready to say Baker Mayfield and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are in the NFC title game?
It feels more. I mean, this team was in this. A lot of these players were in a Super Bowl 2 years ago, or three
True.
years ago. What
Most of
was
the
it?
defense was for sure
Yeah, most of the
three
was
years
it
ago.
3 years ago? Yeah,
Hmm.
3 years ago, right? Mike Evans was there. Chris Evans was. This is a team who knows what it takes to get there and do that.
Hmm.
I'm not saying, but Baker played in. Did he play in an AFC Championship game? No, that's wrong.
No, he only won one playoff game, and it was a
One
wild
playoff
card
game,
game.
right? So he's done enough too where I'm like, I don't feel uncomfortable about any of these guys. You know what I mean?
I mean, I could go out on a limb, and it's an overstretch and it's an overstatement, but like I could go out on a limb and feel somewhat confident saying that Baker Mayfield is a more confident quarterback than Tom Brady. I mean, this kid has
Mhm.
always played with a swagger. From a walk on at Texas Tech to a Heisman winner at Oklahoma, this guy has always felt like he was the guy. There's never been a moment up until he was playing practice squad defensive line in Carolina that he ever doubted himself. He
Yeah.
gets to he gets out to LA with Sean McVay and he tells him, just be you. There's a reason that you took Cleveland from 22 quarterbacks on the back of a jersey to a playoff win in 4 years. It's because you're Baker fucking Mayfield.
He didn't
Play
deserve
like it.
to be booted in Cleveland, honestly. Like a lot of
No,
that wasn't his fault. And
no.
obviously if you ask Cleveland would you undo what you did, they would undo what they did in a
In a
heartbeat.
heartbeat. And it's not even
Um
for the money side of it.
yeah.
Their former quarterback is playing in the next round of the playoffs. They just got skunked by 30 by a rookie quarterback and a rookie head coach last week.
So for me it's Baker Mayfield. And the other part of it too is Dan Campbell is prone to make one really bad decision, either in a fourth down situation, a 2-point conversion situation. Somewhere in there, he's going to make a bad call. And I think this is the kind of game where it catches back up to him.
The bigger factor to me in this game, and again, I think the Lions can get it done. I think it comes down to a shootout, but Jared Goff and that offense have played well enough where I think they can get the job done. The way they lose this game, and the biggest mistake that Dan Campbell can make, he would be making it currently as we speak and tomorrow and on Friday, is not preparing for the blitz. Todd
Mhm.
Bowles threw
Yeah.
everything but the kitchen sink at Jalen Hurts. Kalijah Cansey, their first round pick, who's a defensive tackle, was a stand up edge rusher and middle linebacker, like a jack linebacker rushing after the quarterback. And just with so many different stunts, like they were coming out in nickel sets where Vita Vea is the only lineman with his hand in the dirt. And they have
It's wild.
Cansey and another defensive end stunting around him, and it worked all night long. If they are not prepared for the blitz, they will lose this game. That is, to me, the easiest way that Detroit just f's this whole thing up and sends everybody home sad on Sunday. Is if they are not ready to handle what Todd Bowles is going to throw them at them defensively. On the flip side, Baker Mayfield is going to get his. Truthfully, your whole game plan this week should be like Baker's going to put up 35. We got to put up 38. That's what I want because, I mean, if they're going to do it to Philly, it's not that you shouldn't be ready to stop them, but you've just got to be ready to outscore them, right? Just go the old Golden State Warriors route. If they want to put up 130, let's go put up 135 and get out of here with a win, right?
Yeah.
So if they're not ready for the blitz, they are going to be sore come Monday morning.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot of things at play. I think this game is honestly more interesting because either one, Detroit or Tampa Bay in the NFC Championship game, is a really interesting storyline.
Yeah.
Um, and it would be really hard to pick them to win against San Francisco. So, um, all right, let's jump into what most people are going to say is the game of the week is going to be Buffalo, Kansas City. Um, it's a wild game. This is a hard one to predict. Buffalo is not going to be able to practice. I don't think they were able to practice today.
Wow. They not have an indoor facility?
They do, but it's getting to the indoor facility. That's
Ah,
been the issue for them. Let me
fair.
see. I'm trying to remember. Uh, Maybe they did practice.
Don't mind my keyboard clacking. I'm getting on my beds in here finally.
Yeah. But yeah, it's going to be one of those wild situations. Buffalo has been just downpoured with snow. Obviously, they had to move the game back this weekend. Um, I'm going to take the Bills here. It feels like the time has come for Kansas City. I know Rashid Rice played out of his mind. I mean, out of his mind against Miami. He looked like a stud. Travis Kelce was still on the every other catch diet. He'd catch one, drop one, catch one, drop one. And two of those drops I really think were actually just bad throws by Mahomes. Kelce still probably should have caught them, but they were not the best placed balls.
Not great.
Yeah. And honestly, like the Kansas City defense is really, really good. Like it's probably the best defense that they've had in the Patrick Mahomes era. The issue I have is it's going to be a tight scoring game. And in those, I typically like to say when there's not a substantial gap between the defenses, okay, which offense do I have more confident in? And it's Buffalo right now, right? Josh Allen is a true dual threat, right? He can run it on the ground, he can put it in the air. Um, he's prone for a couple mistakes, but honestly, it might be enough. I feel like Kansas City's offense overperformed against Miami.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I want to bet on that happening again. That's my biggest qualm. That's why I think Buffalo finally gets that big win and gets them over the hump.
I mean, this is a tough one. I went Kansas City in this one. I think the Chiefs just kind of have Buffalo's number when it comes to the playoffs. Now, obviously, we're going to be in Buffalo, not in Arrowhead. Patrick Mahomes' first road playoff game. As much as we're making, you hear that. Well, I've heard that so many times. First time he's going to have to go on the road in the playoffs. We're saying that because it's insane that this guy's made the playoffs for 6 years and this is the first time he's going on the road. Not because we doubt that he can perform on the road. That's not what the conversation is. Truthfully, I don't think last week, next week, the Super Bowl, you will never find a bigger toss-up game than this one. Like, there is, if you want to, and I'll talk about it a little bit. If you want to bet on this game, don't pick the spread. Pick the money line. Whoever you think's going to win, take it.
Take it and run.
I have no idea which way this game is going to go. It's going to be a close one. It's going to be exciting. And truthfully, I think at the end of the day, what costs, this is the best defense Kansas City's had 10, 15, 20 years. The fact that we can sit here and last week before they overachieved, we're saying Kansas City is in the playoffs not because of Patrick Mahomes, not because of Travis Kelce, not because of Andy Reid, because of their defense. That was a top 5 unit in the league, and a lot of people are saying that that's the best defense remaining in the playoffs. I would disagree. I'm also a little biased. I have no hate towards Kansas City. It's an extremely talented defense. The reason that I'm going to lean KC in this game is because when it comes to playing against Patrick Mahomes, you cannot give them extra possessions. And it's not because Patty's going to go down and capitalize every single time. You just stated the offense hasn't been great. They overachieved last week. But if they punt the ball 4 times and then you give them an extra 2 chances for a turnover and then the game ends 28-21, those two turnovers swung it at that point. Right?
Yeah, it's going to be a factor, right? If Josh Allen – honestly, if you said what's one stat that would decide this game, I'd say does Josh Allen throw 1 or more picks or 1 or fewer picks?
Just turnovers, fumbles or picks.
Yeah, fumbles or picks. If he keeps it under 2, I think there's a really good chance Buffalo wins. If it's an interception and a fumble, I think they're in trouble. I really do.
Yeah, like I said, truthfully, gun to my head, and you're like, I want you to predict who wins this game, or you can predict the other 3. If you get the other 3 right, you get to live, or you get this one right, you get to live. I might try to take the other 3 because I have no idea where this game is going to go.
Yeah.
I think I might feel more confident trying to pick the other 3 than trying to pick this one.
Yeah, this is obviously the game of the week. This was the right game to have on Sunday night. There's just no doubt about it.
I agree.
So,
and I think we can both agree Lions-Rams should be Saturday night primetime. Should have been.
Yes. Yeah, it should have been. That should have been the Saturday. Those were the two. Those 2 games are probably the most entertaining games of the weekend.
Which is crazy to get to the divisional round and be like, oh yeah, the 2 1 seeds are the afternoon games.
Yeah.
But There we are.
Yeah. I mean, we had a 7 seed, and then was Houston a 6 seed, or no? They were a 4 seed, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, they're the 4 seed.
Yeah. That's nuts to say out loud, but yeah, we
It
had
is.
two teams that I don't think a lot of people saw win. All right, if you or anyone you know is struggling with a gambling addiction, call the gambling helpline at 800-522-4700. Professionals are available 24 hours a day to take your call. Help is available at no cost to the problem gambler or their concerned others. Rough week for me last week. I went 1-2. Browns -2.5 versus the Texans. Obviously, that did not hit.
Yikes.
Rams money line versus the Lions. Again, that's one of those ones where I let pride get in the way. If I took the Rams +3, it hits. It's just stupid. Just stupid. Just take the points. Stop being cute and picking the money line, you dingus. Won't make that mistake again, but I thought the Rams were going to win that game. And again, take the points, you win that one. The last one I had was Chiefs Dolphins under 44.5. That one was a good bet. Luckily, Miami just didn't score. Otherwise, that one probably doesn't hit either. So
yeah, that KC Miami game was just one of those ones at 44.5. You're like, one of these offenses isn't going to show up. Either KC continues the struggles
cold.
they've had. They continue the struggles they've had. They don't show up, or Miami sucks in the cold and they don't show up. And one of those two did happen.
Yeah.
I did share that bet with you, so that was one of my weeks. I went 2-1 overall. I had Philly and Tampa Bay under 43.5. Holy hell. Who would have thought the Tampa Bay's offense would be the one that almost sprung that one open? I think it ended at 42. So that one was close, but a win nonetheless. And then again, as much, 2-1, but definitely idiot pick of the week. I don't know if Cleveland and Houston could get to 44.5, and then Houston puts up 45 by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, not a bad week. 2-1 puts me at 29-15-1 on the year.
You're having a great year.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's setting up for the most disappointing betting segments for me next year. I'm gonna go 1-9 the first 4 weeks.
So yeah, rounds me out at the year 24-29. Got some work to do if I want to hit that 50-50 mark, which still isn't good enough, but it'll be less disappointing season. This line just felt ridiculous to me, this first one. I can't believe this is the line. Bucks +6.5 versus the Lions. I will ride that all day into the sunset. I feel so incredibly good about that. We're recording this on Wednesday. I would almost guarantee you by Friday, Saturday, Sunday, that line is way down.
What do you think? Do you think it gets to 2.5 or maybe 3.5?
No, I don't think it gets that far. I think it gets to 4, though.
4?
I think 4 is probably a better number. I mean, 3 wouldn't shock me, but 6 is too much.
3.5 is my prediction of where it'll end at.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me, but 6 is just, if that number feels too big for how close I think this game is going to be.
I feel like there's a couple of those this weekend.
Yeah. Chiefs Bills over 45.5. Again, both these offenses looked pretty good. I know it's going to be probably cold and a little snowy, but it just feels like every time that last time it came down to overtime against these two teams. So it wouldn't shock me if this game comes down to the very last drive. And when you have two quarterbacks that are dueling each other, it just elevates that level of play, right? Like,
yeah.
Every time we see this game, it's damn close. It really is.
No one looks at this and is like, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, low scoring game. Doesn't happen. No, even in the cold, these guys are going to get up and down the field.
And then I'm going to take Bills -2.5 versus the Chiefs, riding my prediction out. I think they cover. It could be one where the 2.5 kills me, but I like the cover here.
Yeah, and I think the only way your over doesn't hit there is if that last bet smashes and Kansas City just doesn't show up. If their offense just goes back to what it was in the regular season, they can't show up is the only way that over doesn't hit. Because there's no way the Buffalo can carry it by themselves against that good of a Chiefs defense either.
Yeah.
So, for mine, I've got Baltimore and Houston over 43.5. This game goes two ways. Either it's very competitive and you're going to see that 2024 game or 24-20 game, which would cover, or Baltimore's going to get up and down the field and they're going to cover 35 of this by themselves. I don't see, or you see a repeat of last week. Maybe Houston comes out and wrecks another top tier defense on the way to an AFC title game. The over feels pretty safe. If it was higher than like 47, I might be a little bit more nervous, but at 43.5 should be a pretty easy cash. And the only way I'll be disappointed with it is if Baltimore's on the lower end of that scoring scale and it misses. So my other one, this one is interesting because when I first saw it, I wasn't super confident in it. I have San Francisco and Green Bay over 50.5. Again, kind of the same story. I know it's another 6 points high, 7 points higher than the first line. But again, these two games are so similar to me, and it's both of the 1 seeds in this. Either this is going to be kind of a competitive game, or San Francisco is going to trounce up and down the field all day long, get whatever they want, whenever they want, and they'll put up 40 by themselves in this game. And I think Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers can manage 2 touchdowns to get them the rest of the way if that's the case. So I know it's a high line, but I think you're going to see the inverse of what we saw last week, where I remember my first statement when we started doing bets, I did them on the fly last week. I think you could throw all 3 AFC unders in a parlay, feel pretty confident about yourself.
Yeah.
I think only one of them ended up hitting, but this week I feel opposite. This is the overs. This is where we're coming in now. We're going to have a 12-9 game thrown in here somewhere, and I'm going to want to die, but 'tis the life of betting in sports. So, and my last pick, I don't know if you saw me change it in the middle of you talking about your Rams pick. I had Chiefs money line over Buffalo, and you're like, it's one of those things the Rams +3 would have covered, and I'm like, let me just get the +2.5.
Like, you know what? I will take those points. Good gambling advice right there.
Yeah, let me learn from this guy's mistakes. I'm gonna go head to head with you. I'm gonna take KC +2.5 versus Buffalo again. This game is a toss-up. It's gonna be a damn good game. If you're betting on Buffalo, I think you're probably safer taking the money line in this one. If you want to go KC, obviously take the points where you can get them. Yeah. It is going to be the hardest game for anyone to sit down and try to call because it could. What has the last 2 years came down to? Who had the ball last, right? And in 2 years ago, you're like, even with 14 seconds, it was plenty enough time for them to get down the field. And score again. So whoever has the ball last in that game may be the one deciding it, which usually bodes well for a game that's within 3 points either way. So it's I'm okay with the head-to-head challenge every once in a while, and especially on the toss-up of the century, I'm okay going head-to-head with you there on the last one.
Yeah, so. No, it's game of the week, no doubt about it. So
yeah. I'm glad they got that one right. If we would have had honestly any other game in that spot on Sunday night, I think everyone's pretty disappointed.
That's such an obvious pick. They couldn't have. I don't think it wouldn't even have been.
They couldn't have messed it up. Nah, I agree. There's no way they fucked that up.
Yeah, there's no way you look at that and go, yeah, that's early the game.
Saturday at 3.
Saturday at 3 on that one. Well, if you've made it this far, thank you. Thanks for tagging along with us for 80 minutes. Like we said earlier, subscribe to us on YouTube. Leave us some comment. If you got any feedbacks, our DMs are open on Instagram. So any feedback there is greatly appreciated. But you have anything else for these lovely people?
No, I mean, comments, fan questions, anything you guys want us to talk about, right? If you're like, hey, I'm a Bears fan. I'm curious to see what they're going to do with number 1. What do you guys think? Let us know, right? No matter what it is. Obviously, if we get 20 of those questions, I can't answer them all at once, but we'll get what we can in there. So if there's something you want to hear us talk about, let us know.
And we'll definitely get into more off-season stuff as that off-season comes. We've got the dead week between the playoffs and the Super Bowl. That's normally a really good time for us to what?
That's the most interesting game. What are you talking? The Pro Bowl right there.
Yeah,
Tyler Huntley out there.
Don't care about the Pro Bowl.
I don't care.
Yeah, I could care less. If there was one game I could care less about, it's the Pro Bowl. So yeah, we'll have time to talk about that stuff. So if there's anything you want us to jump into, let us know. So
actually, yes, please get us some fan questions, because if I have to fill half the show with how do we fix the Pro Bowl for the second year in a row, I might die. So get us some topics for that dead week, please. or we're just going to talk about the Super Bowl for 2 weeks. And I'm perfectly okay with that, but I'd rather not. So,
alrighty. Well, we will see you guys next time. Stay safe. Oh, I thought you were going to say something with the
I was
finger
like,
guns
stay
there.
safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you then.